On stage, he's a living legend. He's the red-headed stranger who's been on the road again for longer than most of us have been alive. His voice is a roadmap of American music, etched with the gravel of a million miles. His uniform is as iconic as his sound, the long braids, the red bandana, and the worn-out acoustic guitar he calls Trigger. To the world, Willie Nelson is the smiling, unflappable soul of outlaw country, a man who stared down the Nashville establishment, the IRS, and pretty much every rule he ever met. And somehow, always won. We see the survivor, the artist, the legend, but behind the iconic braids and that calming smile, Willie Nelson is fighting a quiet, heartbreaking battle. This isn't just the story of a country music superstar. It's the untold story of a man who has weathered unimaginable loss and is now staring down the one challenge that could finally silence his music. The world sees a titan of music, still, standing defiant in his 90s, but few truly understand the cost of that survival, the ghosts he carries on stage every night, and the physical struggle that now threatens to bring the curtain down for good. This is the story of the pain behind the poetry, the tragedies that forged the legend, and the final chapter of a man who has given us everything. To understand the cracks in Willie Nelson's foundation, you have to go back to the very beginning, a world of dust and desperation in Abbott, Texas. During the Great Depression, born in 1933, Willie Hugh Nelson entered a world that had all but given up. His parents, Myril and Ira, were little more than kids themselves, completely unprepared for the weight of poverty and family. Before Willie was even old enough to remember them, they were gone. His father took off, and his mother, chasing a better life for herself, soon followed, leaving Willie and his older sister Bobby with their grandparents. This abandonment was the first great tragedy of Willie's life. It was a wound that would shape the man he'd become, while he'd later talk about it with a kind of quiet acceptance. That feeling of being left behind created a void he would spend a lifetime trying to fill with music, with the road, with women, and with weed. His grandparents, whom he called Mama and Daddy Nelson, gave them a home filled with love and, most importantly, music. They were the ones who put his first guitar in his hands when he was just 6. They taught him and Bobby how to read music, nurturing the bond that would become the one true constant in Willie's chaotic life. With Bobby on piano and Willie on guitar, they found a language more reliable than words. Music became their refuge, a way to make sense of a world that had dealt them a hand of profound loss right from the start. He wrote his first song at 7. By 9, he was playing in a local polka band. Music wasn't a hobby, it was an escape. It was how a small, lonely boy in a tiny Texas town could be heard. But the shadows of his early life were long. He picked cotton with his family, a back job that taught him about hardship from the ground up. This upbringing forged in him a fierce independence and a deep distrust of authority, the very soul of his outlaw persona. But it also wove a deep melancholy, a blue note that would forever resonate in his most powerful songs. He was the boy whose parents drove away, and in many ways, he spent the rest of his life on the road again, maybe still searching for the home he never really had. By the late 1950s, Willie Nelson packed up his car with a couple of kids, a string of failed jobs, and a trunk full of brilliant songs. He drove to Nashville, the capital of country music, thinking he'd finally found his place. He was dead wrong. Back then, Nashville wasn't a town. It was a factory. It churned out the Nashville sound, a polished, pop-friendly style with smooth strings and slick vocals. It was everything Willie Nelson was not. Willie was raw and unconventional. His phrasing was inspired by jazz, often singing just behind the beat, and his lyrics were painfully honest. Music Row executives knew he was a genius songwriter. They loved his songs, they just didn't love him. He quickly started writing hits for other artists, penning Crazy for Patsy Cline, which became an all-time classic. He wrote Funny How Time Slips Away for Billy Walker and Nightlife for Ray Price. He was a star on paper, but as a performer, Nashville was trying to sand down his edges and stuff him in a box he was never meant for. The frustration was boiling over. They put him in suits, told him to cut his hair, and tried to polish his sound until he didn't even recognize it. His professional struggles mirrored a chaotic and often violent personal life. His first marriage to Martha Matthews was a storm of jealousy, poverty, and booze. In one infamous story, Martha got so angry she sewed him into the bedsheets and beat him with a broom. It was a destructive time, fueled by the pressure of a career that was suffocating him. The breaking point came one Christmas. Drunk and despairing after a fight, he laid down in the middle of a snowy Nashville street, hoping a car would come and end his misery. He was a hit-making machine, but he was at the end of his rope. Not long after, his ranch in Tennessee burned to the ground in a move that became the stuff of legend. Willie ran back into the inferno, not for money or jewelry, but for two things: his guitar, Trigger, and a pound of weed. For Willie, that fire was a sign from the universe. His life in Nashville was over. He had given them his songs, but he wasn't going to give them his soul. He packed up what little he had left and drove south to Austin, Texas. He didn't know it yet, but he was leaving more than just Nashville behind. He was about to start a revolution. When Willie rolled into Austin in the early 1970s, he found a city that was just as much of an outcast as he was. Austin was a haven for hippies and cosmic cowboys, a blue dot in a sea of red. It was the anti-Nashville here. Long hair and weed weren't just tolerated, they were part of the uniform. In smoky beer-soaked clubs like the Armadillo World Headquarters, Willie finally found his tribe. He let his hair grow long, swapped the suits for jeans, and finally started playing music his way. He wasn't just accepted, he was worshipped. He blended the depth of country with the rebellious spirit of rock and the freedom of jazz. He brought his friends like Waylon Jennings, who were just as sick of the Nashville machine, down to Texas to play. This mix of sounds and attitudes ignited the outlaw country movement. It was a middle finger to the polished formula that dominated the radio. And Willie was there, laid back, pot-smoking king. His albums from this era, like Shotgun Willie and Phases and Stages, were raw and real. But it was 1975's sparse, haunting concept album, Red-Headed Stranger, that made him a legend. The record label hated it, thinking it sounded like a demo. But Willie, now in full control, refused to change a note. The album was a massive success, turning him from a respected songwriter into a cultural icon. He was on top of the world. He had fame, acclaim, and, for the first time, serious money. But the man who fought so hard for his freedom was about to become a prisoner of his own success. Thanks to bad financial advice and his own distrust of the government, there was a ticking time bomb he didn't even know was there. For years, his accountants hadn't been paying his income taxes. In 1990, the bomb went off. The IRS hit him with a bill for an unbelievable $32 million. One of the biggest personal tax debts in U.S. history. They seized everything: his homes, his studio, his gold records. The outlaw who beat Nashville was now cornered by the U.S. government. Willie was broke. The public humiliation would have destroyed most people, but Willie Nelson isn't most people. With the same grit that got him out of the cotton fields, he came up with a plan. He released a double album called Asterisk, the IRS Tapes, Who'll Buy My Memories. Asterisk sold directly through a 1-800 number. It was just Willie and Trigger, a stark, intimate collection of songs. He was literally selling his memories to buy back his life. It took years of relentless touring, but with the help of his fans, he paid back every single penny. He had stared into the abyss and walked away, not unscathed, but unbroken for all the public battles Willie fought. The most devastating blows were delivered in private, far from the cheering crowds. These were the losses that cut deeper than any financial crisis, leaving scars that no amount of success could ever heal. The most shattering tragedy struck on Christmas Day, 1991. While Willie was celebrating the holiday, his son, Willie Nelson Jr., took his own life. Billy had struggled for years with depression, feeling lost in his father's larger-than-life shadow. His death was a gut punch from which Willie would never fully recover. The man who wrote songs about heartbreak was now living its most permanent, painful form. That kind of grief is a darkness that threatens to swallow you whole. Willie retreated, the ever-present smile gone. It seemed like the music might have died with his son. How do you get on stage and sing on the road again with a shattered heart? It was his fourth wife, Annie D'Angelo, who gently guided him back, reminding him that the stage was his sanctuary. He went back on the road, but something had changed. The sadness in his voice now had a name. Every performance of Angel Flying, Too Close to the Ground became a quiet conversation with the son he'd lost. As the years passed, his circle kept shrinking. He lost his closest friends and fellow outlaws. Waylon Jennings, his brother-in-arms, passed away in 2002. Merle Haggard, another giant, died in 2016. Ray Price, the man who gave him his first big break, was gone. These weren't just colleagues. They were the men who The seat that was always filled is empty. The boy left behind by his parents was now, in his old age, being left behind by everyone else. He was the last of his kind, a living monument surrounded by ghosts. For decades, Willie Nelson's body was just another instrument of his rebellion. He treated his own mortality like one more authority figure to defy. But time, the one opponent nobody beats, finally started calling in its debts. His outlaw lifestyle, particularly his lifelong relationship with smoking, had taken a devastating toll on his lungs. The whispers started years ago, but recently, they've grown into a roar of concern. He began to suffer from serious, chronic breathing problems that attacked the very source of a singer's power. It's a cruel irony. A man who made his living with his voice, now locked in a daily struggle for the air to produce it. The signs, it became impossible to ignore. In 2019, he abruptly canceled a 30-day tour, citing a breathing problem. Each cancellation sent a wave of panic through his fans. Was this it? A source close to him said, his body aches and gives him pain, but he's determined to brave through it and keep on performing even if it kills him, which it just might do. The biggest scare came in May 2022, when he caught COVID-19 on his tour bus. For a man in his late 80s with compromised lungs, it was a potential death sentence. His wife, Annie, described a terrifying ordeal, saying there were moments she wasn't sure he was going to make it. He fought for his life and miraculously recovered. This fragility has fueled a new kind of attack, the celebrity death hoax. In July 2025, after a concert was canceled due to an extreme weather event that damaged tour equipment, social media exploded with AI-generated images of Willie in a hospital bed. The rumors spread like wildfire. Nelson himself had to jump online to debunk them, posting a comment that read, "LOL, what a joke." His team quickly confirmed that his famous guitar, Trigger, was safe from water damage, a fact that brought a collective sigh of relief from fans. But the incident highlights a heartbreaking reality. Willie Nelson, a man who has lived so fiercely, now has to repeatedly prove to the world that he's still alive. Faced with a body that was failing him, and a world seemingly eager to write his obituary, Willie Nelson did the only thing he knows how to do. He adapted and he fought back. The man who spent a lifetime breaking rules started following doctors' orders. He finally quit smoking. "My lungs have already said, don't do that," he admitted. It was a profound concession to his own mortality, a choice between his iconic vice and his life's purpose. This wasn't surrender, it was strategy. He wasn't quitting the road, he was figuring out how to stay on it. His tour schedule in 2025, at age 92, remains relentless. With his Outlaw Music Festival crisscrossing the country, more than just performing, he has entered one of the most prolific periods of his entire career. Depending on how you count them, just solo studio work or every release, he's sitting on somewhere between 77 and over 150 albums. In May 2024, he released The Border, his 75th solo studio album. Its title track, written by his friend Rodney Crowell, is a poignant look at life on the edge. Then, in the spring of 2025, just before his 92nd birthday, he released his 77th studio album, Oh What a Beautiful World, a collection of songs all written by Crowell. The title track, a duet with Crowell, isn't a denial of pain, but a reflection on cherishing every moment. It's the sound of a man who, despite everything, can still find profound beauty in the world. He isn't raging against the dying of the light. He's marveling at its glow, turning his struggle not into a tragedy, but into his final, most powerful masterpiece. So, is this a tragic ending? In so many ways, Willie Nelson's story is steeped in tragedy. A boy abandoned, an artist caged, a superstar brought to his knees, a father who buried his own son, and a brother who lost his other half. And now, an old man fighting for every breath while the world speculates on his demise. But to call it just a tragedy is to miss the entire point of Willie Nelson. It's to misunderstand the defiant spirit that has defined his life. This isn't a story of defeat, it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. This is a man who took every punch life could throw: poverty, heartbreak, betrayal, ruin, and unimaginable grief, and he channeled it all into his music. He turned his pain into poetry and his struggles into anthems. His tragic ending isn't the story of a man fading away. It's the story of a 92-year-old warrior who still, night after night, straps on his battered guitar and walks on stage to face the darkness. He does it because the music isn't just what he does, it's who he is. It's his church, his therapy, his reason for being. The road isn't killing him, it's keeping him alive. The final chapter of Willie Nelson's life isn't about the fragility of his body, it's about the indestructibility of his legacy. That legacy isn't just in the gold records or sold-out arenas. It's in the raw honesty of his lyrics and the quiet dignity with which he has faced every storm. He taught us that you can be both a poet and a fighter. He showed us that real strength isn't about never falling. It's about how you get back up. Willie Nelson is still here. He is still singing. He is still fighting, and that is not a tragic ending. It's a heartbreakingly beautiful victory. Willie Nelson's music has been the soundtrack for so many of our lives. What's your favorite Willie Nelson song or memory? Share your story in the comments below.